Okay, yes, we're going to be penalized, essentially, for having experience with the dark side, so to speak. So it's like if you are, it's like someone complaining about something they have real experience with, some risk thing. Let's say there was a risk thing, just call it risk thing, and they have experience with risk thing, and that personal experience with risk thing has informed them, where somebody else would say, well, I've never seen risk thing, I don't know anything about risk thing, unless you show me some statistics that risk thing is bad, I'm going to play around with it. So it's sort of like I could counter argue that the more pervasive psychological phenomenon is one where we negate risk, where we pretend that nothing's going to happen, that we're liberated to drive on the roads and no one's going to jump the lane and crash into us and fiery crash, burn, or whatever the thing is, that we are more likely to negate risk, to avoid contemplating or considering risk, than we are to acknowledge risk. We negate the price, the real price being paid for things, and pretend it's a lot cheaper or that there is a free lunch. So I can just make the argument, like, who's buying the argument that, you wouldn't sacrifice all your good times in life if one of your kids had cancer and you could buy them immunity to the suffering, that you wouldn't sacrifice the substance of the good times and go for the bread and water. Yeah, just give me the neutral forever. If I could spare my kid that suffering. So maybe you would. Maybe you'd be a selfish cunt. But I don't even think you would.
Slave morality. That is, it's a form of revenge against the strong.
I mean, if somebody's sitting in the corner somewhere eating their own shit and banging their head against the wall, you don't sit there and say, oh, what a strong, vital human being. No, you say, what a fucking idiot. Success is being intolerant. Success is having the courage to say no. That's success.
So anyway, yes, I was glad life was imposed upon me. What about those entities, let's say the anti-natalist or etholist, who comes to the conclusion that no, I wouldn't have given consent and I would not want to be born? It's a bit ironic that the etholist accuses the natalist, if you will, of selfishness.
Well, it seems pretty obvious, right? If there's a risk and you impose it, that sounds kind of selfish to me. And so again, we're going back to this bias argument, but I could use a mousetrap as an example, right? One mouse could have gotten really hardly smacked by a mousetrap. I mean, it whapped him hard and good, and he knows what it is to be whapped. Now, the other mice, they've been lucky. They've snuck away with the cheese, and they go, ha ha ha, I got it. And they think it's really easy, and they don't really think there's much of a price to pay. So what, it just snaps you a little. Big deal if that ever happens. I mean, I don't want it to happen, but it's not going to be a big deal. So obviously the two mice have different perspectives because one of them has been there. So I mean, I can always argue. It can always be argued, I think, because we do have to have some knowledge of what this thing is. What is the character of this negative potential? And do you really know what its character is? I mean, I could argue that at different stages in my life I had a different understanding of what it was. And that my understanding at 20 of what it was and my understanding at 30 of what it was were two different understandings. I was scared at 20. I was terrified at 30. Because at 30 I found out that pain can be twice as bad as I thought it could be. And maybe it can be 4 times as bad as I now think it can be. But what I do know is that I know it's not less than I think it is. It's not less than what I think it is now. The only room for error, this is probably a good argument, the only room for error is underestimating, not overestimating.